Hello, law students. This is Mrs. Politsky, and I have your notes for Chapter 4, Our Criminal Laws. And we're going to take a look at Section 1 here, what are crimes? And as we go along, fill in what you need. So here we go. What are crimes? Well, crimes are punishable offenses against society. Society acts as a police officer and a prosecutor when it comes to situations where people break the law. Criminal punishment are any offenses against just a victim and not society. And the elements of a crime that would have to be proven during a trial, a duty to do or not to do a certain thing. So the federal and state statutes are going to be written against the certain act, or there may be an ordinance that's like a city decree against a certain act. And that could be things as direct possession or certain violent crimes like robbery and such. An act or an omission in a violation of that duty. So a breach of duty is a criminal act, and a breach could be proven in trial by testimony of a witness. And then criminal intent. That must be proved in most cases. The defendant, for the most part, intended to commit the act and intended to do evil or harm. When we talk about embezzlement, this is a criminal conduct that involves the taking of another's property or money by a person to whom it has been entrusted. And there is what we would call criminal liability under the doctrine of vicarious criminal liability. This can be substituted for criminal liability. Basically, what it comes down to is the criminal intent of the employee can be used as a substitute for the requirement of a criminal intent for an officer. So there could be a situation where not only the owner of a business, but their employee could be in trouble, be held liable for an act that is done. So I might have an employee that I hired that is embezzling money from potential customers and such. And because I have hired them and managed them, I, the owner, can be held liable as well. There's also the age of reason, sometimes known as it kind of gets confused with the age of majority, which we'll eventually talk about, but the age of reason under common law, this is English common law, is usually under the age of 7. And what basically this age of reason is knowing the difference between what is right and what is wrong. Normally, when we look at it, maybe in the American legal system, we're looking at roughly over the age of 14. Individuals are presumed to know the difference between right and wrong. Today, criminal liability at 18 is at 18, and the range can be anywhere between ages 16 and ages 19, depending on the state. Some statutes provide that a child as young as 7 may be tried and punished as an adult. And that's kind of extreme, especially when we talk about, acts of violence and things of that nature. Criminal intent, one must have sufficient mental capacity to know the difference between right and wrong. So criminal conduct, the classifications, you can have a crime against a person that could include things like assault and battery, kidnapping, rape, murder. These are considered to be fairly violent crimes. You can also have crimes against property, theft, robbery, embezzlement. Sometimes theft is known as larceny. You might see that term being used. You can have the crimes against the government or the admission of justice, such as treason, tax evasion, perjury. Number 4, crimes against public peace and order, such as rioting, disorderly conduct, illegal speeding. Crimes against realty, burglary, arson, criminal trespassing, crimes against consumers, that would be fraudulent sales of securities, so like selling fake stocks, violation of the Pure Food and Drug Act. And then finally, crimes against decency, things like bigamy, obscenity, prostitution. So when we talk about criminal offenses, they typically fall into one of those 7 categories. So classifications of crimes, When we talk about things that are a felony, this is a crime that's punishable by confinement of more than a year in a state prison or by a fine of more than $1,000 or even both. So that can include things like murder, kidnapping, arson, rape, burglary, embezzlement, especially if it's for a very high dollar amount, forgery, theft of a large sum of money, and perjury. Okay. When we talk about perjury, that's lying under oath. That typically is about 2 to 3 years in prison. Aside from felonies, you can have misdemeanors. These are less serious crimes, punishable by confinement, maybe in a county jail or less than a year of confinement, or it could be for a very small dollar amount. So things like disorderly conduct, speeding could be within that. An infraction is a lesser misdemeanor. Convicts can be only fined. There's no risk of jail. So like if you weren't putting money in a parking meter, or if you were parking illegally, that would be an infraction. Littering, things that are somewhat minor. And typically when you have an infraction, if a person is brought before the courts, normally they wouldn't necessarily need an attorney in a situation like that. Moving on. Business-related crimes. Sometimes these are known as white-collar crimes. These are offenses committed in the business world. They don't involve force or violence, but they do cause personal injury to people, and they could cause, they do not cause physical damage to property, but they can financially hurt someone. So things like evading income tax, defrauding a consumer, price fixing, so that you are making more money than your competitor, bribery, embezzlement, political corruption, false advertising. Courts are a little more lenient to people, but in the last 20 years, there have been individuals that are a little more famous that have been made examples by maybe getting a little more serious time behind bars. A great example of that would be Martha Stewart and some issues that she had when she was trying to trade some stocks. She was accused of insider trading, and needless to say, she was made an example of by being sent to prison for a short time. All right, moving on. Antitrust laws. These are laws that state that competing companies may not cooperate in fixing prices or dividing sale regions. Larceny, also known as theft. This is the wrongful taking of money or personal property belonging to someone else with the intent to deprive the owner of that possession. Robbery is kind of a variation of larceny, maybe a little bit more intense in the sense entering a building without permission, intending to commit a crime. So that might be like going into a store and shoplifting. Could also mean that, let's say you're out on the streets, that could be your pickpocketer or your purse snatcher with the intent of taking something from you off of your personal self. Sometimes with larceny, it's like if you're unintending like a piece of property that you just kind of are not paying attention to, somebody will come and take that. Usually there's no physical intent as far as to hurt someone, whereas robbery, there can be. And then finally, receiving stolen property, which is kind of a challenging area here. Knowingly receiving stolen property, consisting of either receiving or buying property that is known to be stolen. So if you buy something maybe online or from maybe a pawn store or a pawn shop, and that material that has been brought there has not necessarily been well documented from where it came from, it's possible that you could be buying stolen property. You would have to prove that you probably didn't know that you were buying or receiving it, but this puts a lot of pressure on businesses that sell things secondhand to ensure that the property that they are selling has been rightfully obtained. All right, moving on. False pretense. This is one who obtains money or property by lying about a past or existing fact, aka fraud is basically what that is. Forgery is falsely making or materially altering a written document to defraud another. So it could be writing checks that, basically, or signing them that don't belong to you or that you shouldn't have had the right to sign. It could be also altering maybe a document like a driver's license to make a fake ID. All of that could be in there. Bribery, that is unlawfully offering or giving anything of value to influence the performance of an official, such as soliciting or accepting a bribe to, perhaps maybe kind of get your way. That has happened over the years. And then finally, there's commercial bribery, bribing non-governmental parties. That means bribing other business owners and such. Moving on, computer crimes. Has created a lot of problems. The only problem is it's really changing quite often, and certainly the cyber laws are really still kind of being written as we go here. As technology changes, so does the law. Extortion, that is sometimes known as blackmail, obtaining money or other property from a person by from wrongful use of force, fear, or bodily harm. Um, Here we go. Conspiracy, that's an agreement between two or more persons to commit a crime. And then finally, arson, the willful and illegal burning of a building intentionally to defraud someone else. You probably throw in terrorism as another one that comes into this. Thank you very much.